we live? All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Last session of the day. I'm super excited. This is my second one for the day. And I'm really excited, too, because this is my own topic, and I asked Amazon Web Services if I can come talk about ad monetization for your mobile apps. So my name's Dennis, and I'm a mobile advocate for AWS. Been there almost 6 years. And today's talk has really nothing to do with Amazon Web Services, but everything to do with monetizing mobile app, what the freemium model is, and premium. So hopefully you guys get something out of it. I might talk a little bit fast just because I get really excited about this. It's really exciting because as startups and mobile, I was super pumped when I built my first app, and then I started putting mobile ads in there and just seeing the money come in. It's just kind of fun. And with a lot of these startups, it's just kind of an exciting time to play around with. And so this is kind of a accumulation of my experience and talking to other customers like Rovio and some big names that we've dealt with in the past about how to monetize and things and how things are moving in the future. And you might go away with more questions than you came with. So, and that's okay, because it's kind of a collaborative effort. So this is also live streamed on Twitch. So if you want to, break out your laptops and have questions, we'll leave time at the end too. But I found when I was developing this for apps and ads, there was not a lot of information out there as far as how to make money and what best framework to use and all that. And it would have been nice to have that. And so a lot of people, if you're making a ton of money on ads, you're not going to go out and tell people you're making a lot of money on ads. And so those items aren't shared. You're not going online as much. You'll see a few here and there, or they'll just tell you I'm making thousands of dollars on ads, and maybe not. But I wanted some details. So I'm going to just share some overview of kind of the app ecosystem of the freemium model, premium, and then we'll go through some of the slides. We'll have plenty of time for questions, and hope you guys enjoy. Okay, freemium versus premium app models. I'll go through that. We're going to ways to monetize a freemium model because we'll understand what a freemium is. Hopefully, most of you already do. How many mobile developers are in-house right now? How many want to be mobile developers? A few. How many don't really care? Okay. How many just want to see? Okay, so then we're going to go over the overview of ad-driven monetization, because sometimes it's real obvious you get paid for ads and that's it, but there's so many different ways to get paid for ads. And then at the end, I want to talk about making more money and from your ads. So about collecting analytics, engaging those users, all different ways of earning money. My son, he's 9, and he plays a ton of games on the iPad and the iPhone. And he gets these, ads, and he's get these videos and transformation. It's constantly inundating, and they could do so much better, mobile developers. And there's new games out there for those users. Fortnite is another great example of they're making a ton of money, and there's no ads. And how they making those money? Through other ways. And so I'll talk about those ways to make money other than ads. And then feel free, we can kind of go and talk about those, because there's several ways that I'm going to talk about that we've seen in-app purchases and all that. But I want to just collaborate on those, because it depends on what type of app. If it's a game, a utility, it just varies. Subscriptions is a new one we're going to talk about as well. So hopefully we're just going to kind of cover a lot of area, and then things you can kind of pick out and focus on and come away. And again, if you're online, go ahead. We have moderators. Ask some questions online, and we'll try to answer those as well. All right. Freemium model, premium model. A lot of you probably are familiar with this. Freemium is this. When it started out, the app stores, they were always 99 cents, $1.99, and it was fine because you were one of a few apps out there in the app store. Freemium model came about years ago because the user didn't want to pay 99 cents for an app that didn't do anything, and they didn't know how it was going to work. So then came along the freemium app, which is a free download, a few features, and then we can upgrade. And we're going to talk about these locks, opportunities for mobile developers to make additional money off the freemium model. Now, the premium model, you're out there, you probably downloaded premium apps. A lot of apps out there that can offer premium, which is paid 99 cents, $2.99, $1.99. You'll see those out there, but a lot of times they've had spread word of mouth, or they're already a premium brand like Adobe, or apps out there that are doing one of a kind. They can get away with it because they're the only ones doing it, or they already have a premium brand, or it's tied into another product. Like any of the Adobe suites, any of the kind of suites that you see can offer a premium brand. They don't have to sell it or offer it for free. But you see almost every game these days is a free download, and you can play it. And we'll talk about some of those strategies where some of these game developers will offer the game, and then it'll be so frustrated. The model is based on frustration. Pokemon Go is one of those examples where Pokemon Go was free to play, but you had to pay up to get anywhere. And they didn't have any ads, but you had to pay up and in order to play and get somewhere in the game. And so that's sort of the model that they took, and it was a frustration model, they called it. So some of the advantages of freemium: you get way more downloads, of course. Sometimes it's just all about eyeballs, and that's great. You get the downloads you want. Multiple monetization strategies. If you're a premium, you sell it for $2.99, it's going to be hard to upsell them, right? Unless, again, Adobe, and you have $2.99 for a brush or a color or something like that. But in reality, the multiple monetization strategy for premium is tough. Lower user expectations. This is a big deal. You pay 99 cents for an app. We all expect this app to work perfect. Everything, dotted teeth, everything. To work great, everything what I expected. And if it's not, I'm going to go to the App Store and rate it poorly because I paid 99 cents hard-earned money for this app. But if it's free and it does nothing, it can give a 3-4 star even if it does nothing because I didn't pay for it. So it's a big deal because apps, when you're going to download an app and you see a low rating, that's a big deal. So, and it's hard to change that. Positive reviews in the App Store are more likely because the less expectation. This is kind of obvious stuff, but sometimes it just makes a difference. So if you're trying to get out there, get more eyeballs, offer the features, offer enough features and services for those users so they're not frustrated, and then start upselling if you can. And it's going to be one of those things where every app is completely different. So these are advantages of freemium. The disadvantages: no guaranteed revenue, right? So if you offer the app and you're ad-based or you got in-app purchases, there's no guarantee that there's going to be a revenue stream. So let's say I have a game or an app out there and I have 1 million downloads and no one's seeing my ads or no one's making purchases or removing ads. They're all connecting into my AWS services and I'm paying a bill, but I'm not getting paid internally from all those users. So there's no guarantee. Versus a premium, you know exactly what you're getting in. Every download is worth X amount of money. Number 2, if you're using ad-based, ads distract users. I mean, none of us love ads, right? Ads are terrible. But they could be used in a better way, but a lot of times they're just a frustrating way. And I'll talk about some of those videos and how you can make it anti-frustrated. But that's one of the disadvantages of the freemium model because you got to get paid somehow. And then high engagement required to generate revenue. Again, this is based on ad revenue. You need a ton of users to start making money and a lot of engaging users to use the app daily, over and over and over. There's an app out there, there's the really popular apps like the sleep apnea apps that track your sleep, or the nightstand ones. Imagine those that are constantly running on your desktop or your nightstand, and they're constantly running for 8 hours while you sleep. And they're slowly showing ads. And even though you're not actually looking at them, there's a good way to generate revenue because you're not really engaging, but they're displaying those ads on those devices. So there's a lot of little tricky ways to make money. But okay, so let's talk about ways to monetize. So we're gonna focus on ad, but let's talk about the other pieces first. So premium priced app. You got a great brand, you got a great product, word of mouth. Okay, let's just go for it. Let's go to the App Store and just go try to sell it. $2.99, $1.99, whatever it might be. But again, all the features have to be there. Everything should be working and enough for that user to say, okay, great, it's worth $1.99. You'd be amazed that 99 cents or 99 euros is a lot of money to pay for even a really killer app that you use every day. It's pretty funny. In-app purchases. Anybody not familiar with in-app purchases? So you download a free app or even a paid app, and you can make a purchase through the App Store with your real money. So in-app purchases could be anything from tangible, intangible items, outfits, goods, coins, whatever it might be. You're using real money to buy virtual product. And this is one of those where we're talking about Fortnite. Fortnite has no ads. This is how they make their money, in-app purchases. And people are going out there and paying $9.99, $10, $12 US dollars or more on outfits, cool gear to make you look really good. And it gives you no advantage in the game, but everybody wants to look cool when you're playing the game. If anybody's played it, It's amazing. It's like you have all these little cool characters and dogs and sweaters. Millions and millions of dollars are spent on users just trying to play and make it look good when they're playing the app. And again, they didn't use the frustration model because you don't have to buy anything to do well in this game. Everybody comes in at a level playing field. So that's a really good example of like how they've adopted in-app purchases and made a lot of money without frustrating every user. I love it as a parent because I don't see any ads, I never see videos, and my kid never asks for some armor and paid $10.99 for it. So, okay, third one, subscriptions. This is the big one. Subscriptions are one of the newer ones where in-app purchases it's taking over, where you could offer your users for 99 cents a month in recurring revenue. So you're offering a game or you're offering some kind of service, and you can set up a subscription through the Google Play Store or the Apple Store and offer in-app purchases through subscription, which is a recurring revenue, which a lot of times the users forget they even signed up, which is a problem. Or it's, they continue to offer incentives. Like as a developer, I would offer a subscription and then each month offer maybe a new feature ad or keep updating that app. And it's a really good way to make additional revenue versus a one-time purchase of 99 cents. So I'd rather have a subscription of maybe 99 cents a month or 50 cents a month, and then it'll add up through those 12 months. And then if they don't want to pay it, they don't get those features in that app. Advertising, that's the one we're going to focus on here. Advertising is a really big point. You've seen it, all the videos, the banner ads, and I'll talk about each one of those in a few minutes. Anybody think another way to make money? Yeah, other? So there's one way, and I hear like multiple times today, and it's one of those things that people don't really talk about until they actually really want to make money, is selling your data. So as a developer, you create an app and you start collecting a bunch of data, and then you sell it to other providers and use that they use that data in some kind of mechanism. Again, it's not talked about because it's somewhat not up and up, but that is another way a lot of app developers will do it. So you'll see apps that don't really do much, you'll download them and you've seen them in the app stores. All they're doing is really collecting your data and then reselling that data to other providers that want to use that information, like demographics, your location, all that. And a lot of times it could be anonymized. So as a developer, you could still make money on selling that data, but not recommended at all. But it is another option. And I wanted to make sure it wasn't on the bullets, but it is something we obviously get. Okay, so now we're into the point where mobile ads. And I'm gonna go overview of like the different types of ads that you probably have seen and maybe you haven't seen, and some approaches that app developers will go through to make money. So interstitial and banner ads. These are the typical ones that you see across the bottom, really nice, or full screen. It'll pop up, and I'll show you 2 videos after this to kind of give you an example of what it looks like for a game to incentivize you to play or to watch this ad, and then you can play additional gameplay. Skippable video is one of those where you're playing the game, and I'll show you the video, and it comes up, you're playing the game, comes up for 30 seconds, and then after 30 seconds you close out, and you can continue playing the game. And I'll talk about impressions in a minute and how this works and how this makes money for you. Rewarded video. Rewarded video, and I'm sure quite a few of you played. I have a poker game that I don't do very well in poker, so I play the game, and I'm always losing money, but I don't want to pay real money. So they say, you can play this video for 30 seconds, and they'll give me additional coin, like 10,000 coins to play poker. And I'm okay with that because that's a rewarded video, and I'm saying I'm opting in to watch this video. It's an ad, but I get 10,000 coins so I can continue playing poker when I'm in the bathroom. But so that's the idea. Is like it's not frustrating for me because I can do additional, or I could pay up 99 cents and buy those same coins. So you have an option as a user, as a player, and as a developer, you have options to say, okay, I want to offer this amount of information. And I'll talk about the cost. The developers get more for videos than regular static ads. I'll talk about that. And then the native ads are something you see a lot, like in Google and CNN websites. You'll see it like in a bar, you're reading an ad, you're reading an article or a list of events, and maybe the 3rd or 4th bar, every one, will be an ad that looks like kind of embedded in the system. That's what you'll see, sort of like really, you can't notice it's an ad, but it's there and you kind of look at it. Facebook is kind of good at that, where you kind of look at it like, oh, wow, oh, this is not a friend, this is a paid ad, right? So those are kind of the native ads that you'll see, ways for developers to apply and make money based on, instead of being that really obvious ad going through. So that's the overview. I'm going to show you a video what that looks like. So they're playing a game. Oh, I stopped it. So they're playing a game. 3 seconds left in the game. And all of a sudden, game over. And this is a really common frustration model. Like, literally, you could be playing a game, and then all of a sudden, then you have to hit the play again to keep playing. So again, I didn't request this video or this ad, but this ad is just going to keep coming up until I play again, then I play another 3 or 4 games, and then an ad comes up. Literally, my kid has played something like this, and it's like every 15 seconds it seems like he'll play, and then all of a sudden an ad will come up, play, play, play. And the developer's getting a lot of impressions, and they're probably getting paid some money, but at what cost for those users? And that am I going to delete that out? Probably. As a parent, I would. He wouldn't, but it depends on how much value you provide to those users for that game. You can get away with it. But that's the frustration model we're talking about, where they'll keep playing these ads, and you'll see it in the App Store. If you ever reviewed an app, you'll look at it and say, oh, there's too many ads. This is a great app, but the ads were terrible, too often, too frequently. And at the end, I'll talk about ways to like approach it so everybody in this room gets a different type of ad and a different approach depending on your use case. So collecting analytics will be the kind of takeaway from this, is collecting analytics and understanding your users and where they're coming from. Like, I don't want to show the first few days that Lenar's playing my game. I want to make sure she enjoys the game for a few days, and then I'll hit her hard, or like slowly just like maybe increment it up. Or somebody who's a real pro user who's reached level 10 in the first week, maybe I'll show them less ads to keep them kind of coming back and showing. So it's kind of a game to play, and this is where you kind of come away with like, what's the business proposition, and how much money you're going to make, how much you want to offer to those users. And again, you collect analytics, and you'll be able to see how often they're coming back, and maybe every time you show a video for the 5th time, all of a sudden you see the sessions drop down, then you better start making some changes. And again, some of these apps are just out there, and you can't change it unless they upload a new app to the App Store. But other ones that are smart, they'll sort of like increment each in, and then get you hooked in the app, and then start adding the ads. That's the thing, you got to get them hooked in the game. And if your game is any value, or your utility, or whatever it is, then they'll go through and they'll manage the ads, and they'll be okay with it. All right, so let me go back to this one. This one didn't play automatically. Here's an incentive ad. Watch this video, or show up here and you get $200 credit. And I say, okay, great. So I'm watching this video, and I have to watch the whole thing. And as soon as it's done, I'll hit the X, and then I'll receive 10,000 credits, AWS credits. I don't need 10,000 credits because I already get a free account, but this is valuable. So this is an incentive video versus this one. Remember, this was in your face every few seconds. So there's a lot of options where you see a game come in and say, okay, you're building this territory, you're building this army, and all of a sudden, like, okay, great, you can play this, but you have to wait 6 hours. And so my son's like, oh, I got to go to bed. 6 hours later, you can come back and start playing it. But if you don't want to wait 6 hours, then you could pay up and play it. So that's another way. It's not ad-based, but that's another way to say, okay, in-app purchases come in where like, I got to play this game, but I can't wait 6 hours. So it's a combination. Sometimes they do ads. Sometimes it's an in-app purchase incentive to say like, okay, you played the game long enough, and then we're going to make you start paying. So it depends on how well you want to. Does that make sense? The incentive ones do really well. Same video, you make the same amount of money, but the user opted in for that video. Okay, so let's talk about revenue. That's how it works. Okay, so we got an ad network. Ad networks are all over the place. I won't go too much involved in it, but the ad networks sign up with advertisers or products, and they say, okay, I'll sell your ads, and I'll provide this SDK to a mobile developer, and the mobile developer installs the SDK, okay? So the ad comes in, and now we have a viewer impression. This is when the ad shows up, either the banner, the video, the interstitial, whatever it might be. This is called an impression. And sorry, if you guys have already done ads, might be obvious to you, but it wasn't obvious to me when I first started out. Ad click, this is where the money comes in a little bit more as you get further in. But a viewer impression is just basically the user's seen an ad, I displayed it, they're looking at it, okay, great. Ad click is, oh wow, I'm interested in those boots. Click on it, That's a click. You get even more from the ad network because they're showing their ads and interacting. And the third one is conversion. Basically, I saw the boots, I clicked on the boots, and I purchased the boots. And then you get even more money, way more money. But that's rarely happens, right? I mean, it's pretty rare. So really, that's where the money comes in, is like massive impressions. So you have these game developers who are doing these large games with millions of users, like Rovio. They get paid on impressions and very few conversions, but that's where the money comes in, is from the impressions. And I'll talk about how that works. Does that make sense? Ad networks pay you to display the ads, and then you get paid a certain amount for impressions, clicks, and conversions. Okay, let's see how it works, the KPIs. So you get revenue per ad, it's called the eCPM, and that's kind of cost per mile, it's the terminology, times the number of ads, and fill rate. So I talk about fill rate in the middle because it's really important, fill rate. So the eCPM is revenue per 1,000 ads shown, and then fill rate is the number of ads shown over the number of ads requested. So fill rate's important because as a global app, your ads need a good fill rate. 100% fill rate is like, I'm saying, as a mobile developer, I want to show 100 ads, and 100 ads were shown to that user. That's 100% fill rate. But in reality, what happens if I'm a global app and I have all these different countries and I have one ad provider, my fill rate may be down to 50%. So that means for every ad I want to show that user, half of those ads are shown. And you know why? Because the ad provider that was there, or the advertiser, doesn't work in that network or doesn't want to show to those demographics. So if my app is in India or China or Portugal, it may not have the demographics that ad is looking for, so we get less fill rate. So this is where it comes in. We have different questions like, okay, start collecting analytics, where are your users coming from? Because remember, if we had 1 million users and half of those users are in those countries where the fill rate's super low, it doesn't matter how much I'm making, I'm not getting fill rate, so these ads aren't even showing to those users, but yet those users are still connecting to my resources, right? So 1 million users is gonna cost me some money, but the revenue is not coming in because they're not seeing the ads. And so that's when we'll talk about collecting analytics and then going with these mediation services. So instead of the one network we talked about, we have multiple networks is the term. So we have a mediation service that says, hey, okay, I understand the problem with global apps. I'm gonna go integrate with all these ad providers, 3, 4, 5, 7 of them. And I'm not gonna go through names, but they collect and they use all the SDK, and then as a developer, I get paid through the mediation service, and the mediation service is able to work out deals, and they'll fill the ads in all those different areas that I need. So the idea is to get the maximum CPM, which is the maximum per 1,000 ads shown, and the maximum fill rate. I always want to be able to show those ads when I expect it. And again, if we collect analytics, then we'd know 3 things we want to say is, I, as a developer, I'm going to try to show this ad, so I want to track that. Was the ad shown? And then the fill rate, and what country, what demographics was that user in? And then I can go back to that mediation service or that ad network and say, okay, put these pieces together and figure out where exactly your users are coming from and exactly what they're paying. And then you can go back to those providers and say, hey, I need more coverage or more fill rate in these countries. And we'll talk about that at the end, about even more ways to optimize that. Okay, so tips to maximize your revenue. Track your own impressions, views, and clicks, and fill rate. So we want to track it right away and not rely on the API. So if you have an ad provider, you're going to go to their dashboard and say, you've had 10,000 clicks or you have 50% fill rate. You want to be able to trust them, and so you want to collect that on your own. You're going to know that fill rate because behind the scenes, you're going to say, SDK, show this ad. If it doesn't show, then it's not filled. So you said show, not filled, then you got the 50%, 40% of whatever it is, and then you're also collecting who that user was, where they're coming from. So you may have 100% fill rate in the US, but you're not in Europe or other countries. So you got to explore that and make sure you're tracking so you can make sense of that revenue. Choose multiple ad networks or mediation service for better fill rate. So this is where we're talking about an ad network. A typical ad network will sign up with a bunch of advertisers or brands, but again, the fill rate may not be there. And it wasn't a problem back in the day, or if you're just in the US or just in the European Union, it may not be a big deal because that ad provider has you covered. Everything's good. But if you want to cover everything, and you're going to global, typically the bigger apps, you want to go with a mediation service. So you make that money. Because remember, there's no guaranteed revenue with a freemium model. So you got to figure out the best way to show those ads. Last part, explore new real-time bidding options for hyperlocal payout. So it's called parallel bidding. It might be a little bit, probably very few of you understand. But this is where things are going based on the globalization and these mediation services. So what this is this allows the developer to make even more money based on their location. So certain ad and brands and ad networks will get together and they'll bid against each other on a certain ad for a certain location. So instead of like this 10,000 ads and you get a certain pennies on the dollar, there may be like a 2-hour frame, like this window between 10 and 2 p.m. in this area, ads are worth 50 cents or $1. And then you decide you could just display more based on the ads, because what they want to do is they want to hyper local. They want to push those ads out to those users who are in that area. So all my app users who are in this room will all of a sudden see more ads or maybe relevant ads to them, and I'll get paid more just based on that 2 or 4 hour window. And that's called the real-time bidding system. So behind the scenes, as a developer, I don't really care. I just know it's there, and it's all real time, and then all of a sudden I'm displaying ads, and I decide if I wanted to show three videos or 3 static ads, it doesn't really matter. But I may want to increase my visibility of those ads if they're worth a lot more. If I'm getting like 50 cents for a video, I'm going to go ahead and show a little bit more to those users so I can make a little bit more money, and then show less throughout the week or throughout the month. So that's a big deal, because now advertisers can like work on certain campaigns by an hour, by week, by month, whatever it might be, and then they could localize that information and just target those users. So like there's some brands that are not in Portugal that are in the US or vice versa. It doesn't matter, because you have the GPS, you have the coordinates, and the network knows and can bid on those ads and say, okay, I'll offer this much for this location. So again, you want to be able to track this information on your own, track the analytics from the beginning, find a good mediation service, embed the SDK, and then decide on your own as far as you want to show ads on a weekly, monthly basis, or even better, understand your users. What they're doing, if they're if they made in-app purchases before, maybe show them less ads. Or if they're a certain level, maybe show them less, or incentivize them some other way. So maybe new users only get videos, and the veterans or the pro users get some kind of static ad that's not so obvious. And so it just depends. So there's ways to like optimize and ways to experience and get more money out of that network. But if you don't track that information, then you're kind of relying on that ad network provider or that mediation service, which they can be like, yeah, the fill rate's great. And then you look at it, oh, wait, the fill rate's great in that country, but half my users aren't even in those countries. I got to move on and then figure out what the next steps are. So again, it's hard, because as you're a startup, you're going to be like, okay, how do we add? We just start an ad provider, we go with it, but start thinking about collecting that information right away and decide on how often you want to engage those users with those ads. Because it's very tricky. If too many, then you can lose those users, and not enough, you don't make any money. So, and we found out the hard way on some of the apps that we've seen and a lot of customers that I've experienced with, and it's hard to say. It depends on the value of your app and what those users feel the value are and how much they paid for it. So, got a few minutes. Let's go make some money. Any questions on that? And again, anybody has done this before? Any ad providers? Any tips or clues that will help other startups get, a head start besides just trial and error? Yeah.
I got him.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, I have a question. What about the model that is not mentioned here? For example, what Amazon is using, where they show ads and you pay them to remove your ads. So, if you know.
Yeah, how to pay. Yeah, so that's a great one, and I kind of touched, but maybe I wasn't clear. But one of the models is, yeah. So you have a freemium model, and you have the ads in your app, right? You continuously show the ads, and this is a good question because it's kind of fun, because you show the ads, and then you have an option to make in-app purchase for 99 cents or $1.99, right? To remove the ads permanently. So you say, okay, great. Also 99 cents. I love this app. I want to remove the ads. I can't stand the ads. But as a developer, where's that point of inversion where all of a sudden 99 cents is not worth it anymore? Because if that user is using the app multiple times a day, where does that 99 cents catch up? So you're losing money, right? So it seems really great for the user. Okay, have I paid 99 cents, or do you do a subscription, which seems really weird, right? You do like 99 cents per subscription for a month to remove my ads and keep removing my ads once a month. Then you made $12. Is it? Yeah, 12. You made $12 versus 99 cents. But that's a good question. I mean, you have to figure out where that 99 cents inverts with the amount that you would made with those users. And maybe you don't offer the in-app purchase to those users who have used the app a certain amount of time because you're making more money on those ads. So that might make a big difference. Or maybe in those countries where you have less fill rate, 50% fill rate, you're like, okay, you know what, 99 cents is worth it because you're not getting the fill rate anyway, and there's nothing you can do about it, so might as well get 99 cents out of them, right? Or the conversion in certain countries, like if I'm getting paid US dollars, and I'm in a different country where the conversion rate is very little, and I'm getting very little for it, then I might have to bump it up or not offer the in-app purchases to those countries because it's just not worth that value, and I'd rather just have to show the ads. And that's where you kind of like, wait, so if it's 99 cents and it's in a different country where there's 50% fill rate and the conversion rate, I'm only getting 50% and Apple's taking 30%, I'm just gonna keep showing the ads and not offer in-app purchases. So it's kind of a game to play. But that's a really common model is in-app purchases to remove ads. Yeah, but you gotta figure out what the best value is. Yeah.
Hello. How do you guarantee that the information that is coming from the device is not tempered? For example, as a developer, you want to know that the information is coming from a fill rate from a country that has a good fill rate or not. How do you guarantee that the information that you are receiving it's not tempered? So you can provide the best guarantee to the providers of the ads.
Yeah, so how do you guarantee that those are ads from the network that you're expecting? So the SDK is signed, so you have this security like API key, and then you could verify it from the app side. You can verify like a token or a signed certificate from that provider or that mediation service so that you guarantee that this information comes in from that provider and not from anybody else. And the other question would be is what information is passed back to those ad providers? And in some cases, nothing other than just a few randomized numbers. And in some cases, it might pass back more information than you'd like. So that's something you have to play with and figure out what the ad provider, what their release form is, and what that information is that they provide. Yeah. Any other?
Hi. Well, I represent the company. We actually do real-time bidding. I will not tell the name of the company, no advertising here, but just as an advice for developers here.
Yeah.
Every company is different. Well, there are a lot of differences between us, and just test us. Just take a few SDKs, integrate it, test, and you will see the difference in fill rates, difference in countries, and just do diligently. Just do a testing, and that's the advice for everyone.
That's a great advice. And it was he's saying, just like Amazon Web Services, like, how much is this going to cost me? Well, first of all, you have $200 credit, but you can try anything. But the idea is just try it out and start collecting those analytics, right? Because you got to second guess the mediators and make sure that this is exactly what you're expecting. And again, you can see it looks like good numbers, but then if you look at it a little bit more detail, you might not have that. So make sure you just try it out and then release it to a couple testers. Or you can even release it on test flight as a beta and then kind of start collecting that information from those users. And it tells you a lot, exactly what you're going to see. And then you can compare that to the console or the API dashboard. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah.
I'm here, over here.
Oh, hey.
I'm working with mobile apps a lot, and could you please recommend and advise the ultimate analytic tool? Because most of the tools, they collect information which is not ultimate. For example, working with cohorts of the users whom you purchased, traffic which you purchased 2 months ago, for example. How will it work in a month or exactly in a couple of other months? Or the user behavior. This is collected from AppsFlyer. Another thing is collected from, I don't know, just iTunes, and another information is collected from just Facebook and something. And you have to watch the sources, how the exact traffic works with a cohort of time from that exact source. And you cannot collect this all in one tool. Do you know this sort of tool? Which would help?
What, that helps you sort out exactly where, like as an app developer, where your stuff is going, like where the data is traveling out? No, I mean, there's a few tools out there. And I actually was just using a third-party tool just recently that does, it sort of it traps all your traffic. And as you launch each service, you can kind of see the traffic going out. If you really want to get involved and see exactly what networks go out, that's how a lot of ad blockers will go. They'll stop, they'll look at domains, they'll look at certain data, and they'll block them at the source. But there's no really way unless you start tracking the network and then figure out like, okay, this is going to iTunes or this is going to this ad provider. And in some cases, you can't block it. If you want to get paid, that's the SDK, and sometimes you have to weigh that option and figure out like this data has to be collected, and then you have to be okay with it in some cases. So the ad provider, the mediation service might do that. So was that the question? Like, how do you, like, was there a tool to kind of track all that? And there's really not. There's not. I mean, there's third-party tools out there, if anybody, unless somebody knows about it, but just using the debugger tools with like Xcode or Android Studio and just monitoring the entire traffic flow when you're starting an app. Like install the SDK, launch it up, and you'll see all the traffic going to all the domains, and you'll be able to see that information. And sometimes it's like might be encoded, sometimes not, but at least you give you an idea of what information is being passed out of there, even when the app's not running or seems to be not running. There's ways to do it. But yeah, there's third-party apps out there that can track it, but I'm not sure of any right now offhand, or at least that I could say. Anybody else? Yeah. Oh, she's. You gotta yell.
How do you track your, the impressions? Can you answer me that? I mean,
yeah, how do you track your impressions?
Yeah.
So tracking impressions, so we're talking about like when you wanted to display the ad and then the user sees the ad, that's an impression, right? So in the analytics, a simple custom event is say, as soon as I say I want to show the ad, then you track the event, and then you'll know if it showed based on what that SDK has displayed, like a callback. So the ad is shown and say, okay, this is the ad that I requested, and there was an ad shown. In that case, or if you say don't get a callback and there was no ad shown, then it becomes an ad request with no impression. I'll come down, what? Huh?
Which way of tracking?
Oh, which way of tracking? Just analytics. I use Amazon Analytics. No, Pinpoint. I use Pinpoint or any analytics service that you can just send a custom event. But these are custom events along with the demographics of those users. So as soon as you say, I want to request an ad, you put that event in there, and then the demographics of that user. Of course, it's not everything you're sending, but like what device and what they were doing, what session, what screen. And then was that ad displayed? And there's a way through the SDK to show the ad, right? You were talking about there's a way, okay, callback or something that, yeah, and it's a custom event to say that that ad was displayed. And then you can track it that way. Then you can take the analytics anywhere and aggregate that. Amazon Pinpoint is what I use, yeah. But that's because I'm Amazon, yeah. But any analytics for a custom event, and send it along with the analytics data. And then sometimes if it's a SDK and you have multiple ad providers, make sure you show what kind of ad provider you used at the time, so you know kind of what information you were trying to display. Yeah. So hopefully I was clear. Like for the fill rate thing, remember the fill rate? You're trying to display an ad. That ad doesn't display. That just means that the network didn't have that ad to display for various reasons, and that just means there's no impression there. So every time you want to show an ad to your user and it doesn't display, that's just less fill rate. So it doesn't matter how much you make. I mean, I guess it does. If you make a really great impression rate and a 50% fill rate, maybe it equals out to 100% fill rate with a really low CPM, and that's possible. It just depends on what type of network. And that's where that real-time bidding comes in, where like it kind of just evolves. And there's a lot of things like first-time ad first time the ad is impressed on that user, and then the next ones are worth less money, though less willing to pay. Yeah.
Maybe you can repeat the question, but one of the things I'm battling right now is the quality of the ad. You know, how long time is it in screen?
Yeah.
In order to get the most out of each ad.
Yeah.
How do you go around that? It's
like not relevant or something to, yeah.
Just small things all the time. It's really, really difficult.
Yeah, are you talking about the content like it's a lady's clothing and you have you know, an app on race cars or something? Or?
And the quality is if it's visible.
Oh, yeah.
If it's 90% visible.
Yeah.
10% visible.
Yeah.
Depending on scrolling.
Yeah. So, yeah, his question was, and the mediators might have like, so his question is how do you control those ads as they're coming across, like, and the quality and the visibility, and most of them will allow you to, in the background, and behind the scenes, you could say like, I only want to show to this demographic. Like I don't want to show diapers, and I'm having a utility app that's like meant for 40 to 50-year-old males. Like I don't need to show diapers unless they're male, you know, adult diapers. But then the quality, like, you know, how do you control? Most of those SKs should always let you control, and if they don't, but control the size of that video and how long it's going to play. You should have control over that, whether it's a 20-second video or a 30-second video or a minute video, right? And then you get paid per, you know, if the developer says, I want to make a ton of money and I'm going to play it for a minute, then they play for a minute. But you should definitely have control over if it's a video, if it's not a video, the quality of the video, or like where it's going to be displayed. You should have full control of that. And that's where you try out a network and figure out what's the best. Because some of them might just be like, we're just going to throw these out there, and you have no control, or it's really bad quality. It's like, it just looks bad. Because remember, iAds used to have really cool, like, looking ads, and they had like a race car going across. You can click on the ad and interact with it, and it was a click, and then you could it was BMW, and I think BMW's in this room. You could click on a BMW, take you to the BMW ads. Like, that was kind of cool. But now, like, there's some ad providers who's like, it's super grainy. I have a really nice quality app, and I got this beautiful iPhone 10. It's like, and it just looks like garbage. It decreases the value of the app. And so that's another thing, is try out an ad provider that says, I need quality apps. I want HD apps. I don't want any web apps. I don't want any of these like ads that you can barely see the writing or has like weird writing. I was like, yeah. And you should have control over it. There's a ton of competition out there and a lot of value that a lot of those mediation services provide. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your speech. Talking about ad networks, usually they always collect data and they show it in your personal dashboard as well. But have you had any issues with the data discrepancy? What I mean, you already know how many users use your app, but you put there some ads, and then you go to your dashboard and you check that you have 2 times less impressions than you're supposed to have.
Yes.
Have you ever had any discrepancy issues, and how did you resolve it?
That's very common. That's why we collect analytics, and that's what a lot of the customers come to. Like, okay, wait, so these ad providers, what's going on? And again, it could be just like a miscommunication, could be whatever. But in a lot of cases, yeah, you're seeing those impressions, but maybe you didn't track it and you didn't realize, like, I asked for this ad to be shown, but it never showed. And that's what the real common mistake. Like, okay, I didn't know it wasn't showed or shown.
So this is the mistake of ad network, or maybe this is some error while implementing SDK?
Yeah, yeah, it's
whose
possible.
side is this issue?
It could be a combination. It could be a combination. Okay. And the other thing we didn't talk about is caching. So caching is a big deal. So if I'm offline, right, and I have an ad, so my users are offline for a certain amount of time, and I don't cache those ads, and say they're on a plane for 4 or 5 hours, and all of a sudden I could either decide to like, hey, this app doesn't work without ads, and I could literally just shut down the app. It happens all the time. If you ever played a game, half of the kids on these iPads can't play the games because they're not connected to the internet. And why? They don't need to be connected to the internet. They just need to have ads. So the developers can do a lot with that. They can cache these ads, like 10, 12, multiple cache providers, and be able to cache those on the system so that when they're in the plane and they're still seeing the ads, and then later it uploads all those impressions or clicks. Obviously you can't click on it and do conversions, but at least they're impressions. So it could be just a combination of things, like where it's not an error. If you ask for an ad and it doesn't display, doesn't necessarily mean it's an error. It just means that ad network didn't have any ads to display at that time. And that's where you want to track the analytics to figure out what that fill rate is and go with a different provider to fill that. So what happens typically, you have 2 or 3 providers. A didn't fill it. As soon as A didn't fill it, you go with B. B is the next rate. B didn't fill it, you go with C. C didn't fill it, you die. So you can move on. So that's kind of the mentality, figure out what's the value, and then try to always fill that ad with the provider. That's what's nice about the mediation service, is they're providing all these ad networks that are just optimized for that area, for those advertisers, and then they'll have a nice fill rate for those based on that rate and ad. So usually you'll have less issues with that, but it's a problem, and make sure you just track your request and actual impressions that show up. And then you can go to their dashboard, and sometimes maybe they don't track it as much. Maybe you're like, okay, maybe they're just gonna say it's behind 24 hours or 48 hours or something, but typically it's a combination of either offline, you didn't cache the ads, or they weren't getting them, something like that. But as long as you track the analytics, say, hey, I'm looking here, and then why was there a discrepancy? And usually you can explain it, they'll figure it out. Yeah.
When I think about this distracting full screen ads, I was, and you also had a good example here, the close button is always randomly placed, sometimes right at the top, left, around. Yeah. So my question is, who is deciding how this close button looks? Is it the ad network? Is it the app developer? Who decides the randomly size of the randomly positioned button?
Typically, it's the ad network. It's in the SDK. So you say, I want to show this ad, and it's going to be full screen, and they'll pull up, and they'll have the little X available to you, and then you can hit the X. Now, there's certain ways to maybe tweak that I'm sure some developers will do, or put the X in a weird spot. But most of the time, that's provided by the SDK. So you just display the ad, and you have no control over it. And sometimes it's a grainy little X, and you're like, it's like cheesy, but that's how it is. And then sometimes it just automatically shuts down for you. So you'll have it so it'll be showing up, and they don't have to hit the X. It'll just close down like that one first ad example, and then automatically apply what you asked for or allow you to start playing the game automatically. So it just depends on the SDK or what they give the developer to optimize that. So they can decide to quit that ad or display the ad with a close option. Yeah. And then some people, back in the day where you're shoot 'em up or you're playing a game, and they'll put the ad right there by the start button or the fire button. So about every 10 or 12 times you'd hit an ad on accident because it was so close to that fire button. Oh, those were I used to love those. Like every time it's just like you start laughing because and maybe it was done on purpose, maybe it wasn't, but it's pretty funny because it becomes a click. Instead of an impression, it becomes a click, and you make even more, but the user never intended to do that. So you piss them off enough, and then they may go elsewhere. Yeah. But yeah, you should have control over it on the SDK, full control over how that is, but that typically the close app is part of that SDK. Yeah. How many? Yeah.
In terms of ad blocking applications and software, how do you handle these issues?
How do I personally handle he's talking about ad blocks. This is one of those issues that come up because it's not necessarily the ad network's problem, right? Because they're trying to display the ad and they're getting blocked. But it just becomes, and maybe that's where the discrepancy comes from, is when you're trying to display the ad and it's being blocked by the user or the network or whatever. So in different countries, there's literally no fill rate, and the networks can't do anything about it. The developer can't do anything about it. And in Android, sometimes the jailbroken, unlocked these phones, and they provide these ad blocks in there. So there's really not much you can do other than track it and then hope everything works out with the ads. And so a lot of times you may have users in certain areas where they're almost always getting blocked, and there's not much you can do about it. You can try to work around different ways, and I think the mediation services, you guys try to work around something, but there's really not much you can do as far as like saying, okay, I want this fill rate. And we do have a service that just says, okay, from a certain IP or a certain region, you can block certain requests coming in to your network or to your resources. So if you say, let's say you have a website or a service that's on CloudFront or CDN, you could actually block certain requests from certain areas. And I mean, you're talking about, so if you started collecting analytics and you realize there's a lot of ad blocking from this area, then you can kind of block that and kind of protect your resources being utilized when you're trying to make money from that. It just kind of gets a little sketchy, but so is ad blocking, you know? And ad blocking is there for a reason. It's like, I don't want to see ads. But then again, if I have 100,000 users and they're all ad blocking and my money's coming in from ad revenue, what do? Right? You still got to pay the bills. So there's that, and that's, again, more questions you got to figure out, like, what do you do? And you can't just let those users keep using the app, and maybe incentivize them with something else. Allow them to play the game in a different way, or reduce the usage, or put a quota, or rate limit them, whatever. All that's opportunity for you. You can do to maximize your resources, but then not get paid for it. So there's quite a few options, and I think we're about out. I'll be around for a few minutes if anybody wants to talk strategy. Thank you.